Hi guys, so before we get into it, a very quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other Amicus film reviews in my Amicus playlist, and there probably will be spoilers today, although I'll try and refrain myself from telling you who the killer is, but it's going to be very difficult when it comes to this particular movie, I think. And actually the DVD box gives away who the killer is for this, which I've never seen before in my life. More on that later. This is a film about a psychopath, predictably enough. It's another one directed by Freddie Francis. We've got Patrick Wymark in it. We've got Robert Bloch writing it. So already in this Amicus review series, we can see familiar names coming back several times over. So this film is about a guy who's running around a small section of London, killing various people who are all connected because of some incident in Germany years ago, and trying to solve the whole thing is a guy called Inspector Holloway. He's a cop. So this is a combination of the slasher genre and detective mystery genre, I suppose. Just picture if Columbo was in something like Tenebrae. Oh, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? I'm actually making the film sound much better than it is, to be honest. This character, Holloway, he's played by Wymark, and it's really nice to see this actor playing somebody who's not a weasel, because up to this point I think I've only seen him in Where Eagles Dare and The Skull, but in this film he's actually a nice character. He's an incorruptible cop. He's only concerned with solving the mystery. We never find out anything about his private life or his thoughts on the world. He's just a guy investigating the mystery. That's all you get. So basically Columbo. He's even got the same white jacket as well. But this character very much flatters to deceive, I would suggest, because in his first scene, he rounds up all the possible suspects in a music room, and he completely outwits them all verbally. And by the end of the scene, I'm thinking, oh, this character's really cool, I'm going to enjoy this. But for the rest of the movie, he never does anything as cool as in that opener. Like, he's just going through the motions for most of this film, really. And yes, he ends up facing the killer in the final scene, as you would expect, but it's not because of his great powers of deduction, really. He just kind of ends up facing the killer somehow. And the final fight in this, if you can call it that, is really surprising insofar as the inspector is bested, and it's only by pure blind luck, actually, that he survives and the killer doesn't. It reminds me of a Hammer film that I saw a while back called Hell is a City, which also had a cop as the main character who was really good throughout most of the movie, and then in the finale he was just found wanting in the action scene, and it just came as a surprise to me. In films like this, you generally expect that the cop will turn out to be really good at the shooting and fighting, and yeah, in that film and Hell is a City, it doesn't really happen, in all honesty. Another weird thing about the Psychopath is the colour scheme. So this is kind of like half colour, half black and white. I didn't know what I was watching at first. Like when it came on, I thought to myself, oh, this is a black and white one. I didn't know that, but that's fine. I've seen many a great movie in black and white, and black and white can look great, you know. But I've never seen a film do black and white and colour at the same time, kind of mixing the two from scene to scene. It's not done deliberately. I think this is meant to be a colour film. They've just kind of botched it somehow in post-production, but it's definitely not just me, because I went on the wiki page of this afterwards, and if you look at the production notes or the reviews section, somebody says that this film suffered from indifferent colour processing. You're not kidding. Like, and it just doesn't work. Like, a film has got to be either black and white or colour. You can't just kind of mix the two like this. Mixing things in general in movies is always a risk. I remember watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit when I was a kid, and even though back then I was still at an age where I was watching cartoons as well as live action, excuse me, my brain just couldn't process the fact that I was watching an animated rabbit on screen with Bob Hoskins. It just felt wrong completely. Mixing things in general, bad. I remember making toast once where I put salad cream on the toast, and it didn't taste very good. Toast by itself, great. Salad cream by itself, great. Mix the two, No, and another time I put blackcurrant yogurt on a ham sandwich as an experiment, and that was even worse. That tasted absolutely awful. I think that was the end of my food experiments, to be honest. How did I get onto this? Where was I? Probably the biggest strength of this movie is the variety of locations, but strangely, it's also a weakness at the same time. Confused? I will explain. So, we see lots of great looking places in this, like a giant boatyard and a house full of dolls. And actually, on the subject of that, it's really cool watching Holloway go into this private residence that's just got hundreds of dolls everywhere. And I don't just mean collected on the walls, on shelves, like a really efficient Blu-ray collector or something. No, these dolls are like all over the place, all over the floor. So Holloway has to weave in and out of them like a slalom skier just to get to the person that he wants to interview, which is this doddery old woman in a wheelchair. She lives in this house with her son. This woman, very reminiscent of Miss Havisham from Great Expectations, and the son is just plain weird. But on the flip side of the fact that we've got these cool looking locales, this world just doesn't really feel lived in. The very, very few extras in this entire film, and it is a little bit of a problem. There's one scene in a cafe where there's like 3 extras, I think, but I think that's the biggest effort that's been made. Holloway he's going around all these places and interviewing suspects, and all these people just happen to work solo wherever they are. It's not like this is 2024 with people home working. This is the 60s, and all these people he's going to visit are all working in outside places, but they're all working alone, and it's really noticeable. So Holloway visits this one guy in an office. He's working alone. He visits another guy in a scrapyard who just happens to be working alone. There's no other employees around. He visits another guy who works in a boatyard alone. This massive place. There's no other employees floating around. And after a while, you just think to yourself, this doesn't actually feel like a real world at all. It feels more like a theatre production with ever-changing background. You know, they put the background of the scrapyard in, we'll change scenes, and then we'll have some stagehands put the background of the boatyard in, and we'll keep going like that. I had to actually look on the Wikipedia page just to find out where this movie is meant to be set. I kind of figured it was London, but it's not easy to tell. It just feels like this film is its own unique world with only 10 people in it. You would think that one of the people Holloway goes to visit will just happen to be a guy who works at Harrods with like 100 people floating around, and Holloway will have to lean in to make himself be heard, but there's nothing like that. I understand that it's costly to have extras and crowd scenes and things like that, but you've got to make some kind of effort, even if it's on the cheap, to give off the illusion that this is a lived-in, breathing world. Just do something simple, like have a camera on the corner of a street and show loads of cars and people going down Piccadilly, and then instantly switch to Holloway in an office scene or something like that. Maybe that's all you need, but there's not a lot of that in this film. One thing the film definitely gets right is the lullaby that plays from time to time. So there's like this little ditty. It's got no lyrics. It's the sort of thing that you might hear in a film like Deep Red or The House on Sorority Row, one of my personal favourite slasher films from the 80s. It's a tune that's very simple. I think it might have been played on a xylophone, possibly, if I'm remembering it right. But it's like a children's tune, and it's the sort of thing that makes you think that the killer is probably suffering from some kind of childhood trauma that they've never managed to get over, and it's definitely contributed to them being the way that they are. The killer in this, he gets a really stupid death. Well, he doesn't quite die, but the manner in which he's taken down is utterly ridiculous. And I guess I've just given away the fact that the killer is male in this. I've therefore probably reduced your suspect list in your head to just one person if you've been paying attention, but it's not going to affect your enjoyment of the movie. But the way that this guy is taken down, I actually genuinely laughed out loud because it's so stupid. So this guy, he's climbing up some giant linking chains in the boatyard, and he slips and falls, and the chains start falling towards him. And then we cut away, and then when we cut back to him, we see that he's perfectly wrapped up in these giant linking chains, like a victim in a giant Anaconda movie. And it's just impossible that this could have happened by accident. Like, it would have taken 6 or 7 fully grown men, basically the entire cast of this movie, to spend maybe half an hour perfectly placing these chains around this guy to get this effect. That's probably what it took to get this shot. But the idea that this could have happened naturally in one falling motion of the chains is just so dumb. Like, this movie is mostly serious, but this moment just gave me such a laugh. I do like the closing scene that comes afterwards, where we find out that the killer survived this moment, and he's confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life, and he can't quite speak properly. This is a good outcome for a really nasty serial killer, I think. As film viewers, we're all desperate to see killers get a really nasty death, but if you think about it, dying relatively quickly, it's not that much of a punishment. Sometimes it's far worse for a killer to go to prison or get a fate like this where they're left disabled. I guess the ultimate fate for a character in a horror movie was the guy at the end of The Fly 2, who's turned into that horrible creature, and presumably he would have lived like that for a long time. We don't get anything quite as bad as that here, but I just liked the outcome for this killer, much better than just having him choked to death in some giant chains, I suppose. One character who's very prominent at the ending, and actually throughout most of the movie, is a character called Louise, played by Judy Huxtable. I've never heard of this actress before, but she is absolutely stunning and definitely gave me something nice to look at in this film. Probably the first time in these Amicus films so far that I've been reviewing that we've actually had some glamour, because there's not a whole lot of that in Dr. Terror's House of Horrors or The Skull. But this actress really brings it, and she can definitely act as well. I could picture her like stepping into the shoes of Lauren Bacall in some much more famous film noir or something like that, but probably the wrong era, to be honest. But Huxtable's very noticeable in this. I liked her a lot. I'm surprised I've not heard of her before. I can only remember about 4 characters from this movie, even though I watched it the other night. So I can remember the 2 main suspects, Wymark, Huxtable, and that's it. 4 people. All the others are completely gone from my memory already. Time to show you the version of the film that I own for this. Before I do, I'll just warn you that there are more spoilers on the front of the box, so if you don't want to see those, then look away now. But here we are. Here is the DVD box of The Psychopath. Here it is. Yeah, Mother, can I go out and kill? Now, as soon as this turned up in the post, I looked at this and thought to myself, oh, well, I know who the killer is now. Thank you for that, because there's only one character in this film who has a mother. So right from the off, I knew who the killer was in this. To be fair on the film, I think most people will predict who the killer is once 20 or 30 minutes have gone by. I just don't see how you could think it would be anybody else. There are more spoilers on the box. I don't think you'll be able to see it, but there's like little pictures of the kills that you get in this, which is weird. Imagine if you got the box of Halloween and it had a picture of like the girl being strangled by the telephone cord, and then another little picture next to it of Bob pinned up against the wall. All the kills, basically, from that film, they're just on the front of the box. You'd think to yourself, why do that? I don't get it. It's like this DVD release was designed for like old people who would have seen this film back in the 60s, and now they're just looking to rediscover it for one last watch of it before they pop their clogs. But no, there are younger people out there who weren't alive when these films were made and want to discover them anew. So it's weird to get a DVD box like this. The actual release has no features on it at all. Not that I'm bothered for this particular film, but when you put it on, the film just starts playing. There's not even a menu. It cost me about £10, I think, which is reasonable for any film these days, I suppose. Will I watch it again? I don't think I will. I'll put it on my shelf for now. I can't see myself suddenly deciding to watch The Psychopath at any point in my future, just being honest. Right, let's get to the bag of terror and see what sort of score. We've got 1, 2, 3... bloody axes out of 5, so it's still a good film. I enjoyed it as a one-time watch. Probably the weakest Amicus film we've had up to this point, and no doubt with lots and lots of films still to come in this review series, there will be at least 1 or more films that get a lower score than this. Not a terrible film, but certainly one that's just a bit weird, and the way that it's been the way that it's been made with the colour scheme and everything like that. Yeah, so there we are. So that was The Psychopath. I think the next Amicus film is something called The Deadly Bees. Yeah, so we'll see what that brings. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.